So I heard this crazy thing. So like when I said the muscle mass thing, um, so Tara's really into like fitness right now. And remember how I track all my calories,
Hmm.
right? Like with that app thing. And I've been saying like for a while, like, oh, this is really fascinating because you learn a lot of crazy stuff while you're doing it because you realize like, oh, this home cooked meal is like 200 calories, but then you see like, this processed food meal is like 2000 calories. And you're like, but my limit is 2000 per day. Like that's the average human.
Hmm.
Um, so she's like been mind blown by that. But we she put this thing of like, can you eat 100 grams of protein a day, right? For like muscle mass building. And I saw this thing on Reels recently, which was there's a really skinny girl, and she was like, yeah, I look pretty fit, right? Like, yeah, I'm like that aesthetically pleasing, whatever, appealing, whatever. And then she said, but I'm was it like almost type 2 diabetic? And I was like, there's no what? How are you like this? And then I showed it to Tara. And then she's like, yeah, I actually see a lot of people like this. And I was like, all right,
Hmm.
how is this happening? And the person said that it's because when you get into your 30s, if you don't retain muscle mass, so all right, I didn't know this. So Tara's like, your whole body is held together with either fat or muscle. So if you don't have muscle holding your body together, it's going to be fat. It
Hmm.
needs one thing to keep like your organs and like your like just everything
Sure.
together.
Yeah, yeah.
But I never thought I was like, oh yeah, of course it would, because that's what our like things made of, right? And she was saying that like if it's fat, not muscle, then you have like health issues, and that's why the girl, even though she looks like skinny, it's more fat than muscle, and that's why she's almost type 2 diabetic.
Hmm.
And it's like, what? You know, like even with so when I said like in the future, who's gonna survive? Like if we end up not needing as much muscle, maybe the ones that survive are the ones that can like have more fat than muscle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because
Sure.
we're not really getting as active. So it's like, okay, the ones that die out are the ones that couldn't survive with more fat than muscle.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
then that could be the new body type in the future. And that's what we are like, what will
It's
humans look like? It's
yes,
crazy.
it's ever changing, but it's ever changing
Yeah.
very slowly. But we also are changing things faster too, depending on now we make different kind of drugs, right? That's why more people are
Yeah,
survive
totally.
through a lot of different things, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the interesting part too. It's like, what what is medical advancement going to do? Like, let's say you cure cancer,
Hmm.
then what? It's like the only two things that are really stifling us right now are cancer and aging,
Hmm.
right? Like cancer is like, I don't even know how you're getting that. So there was this, I saw this another other reel, and then I was like, how is this possible? And so there's this really, really like fit individual, and they're like a fitness influencer. They're just super healthy, whatever, whatever. They got diagnosed with type 4 cancer,
Hmm.
which is like that's like late state. You're like, oh no, this is going downhill,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And he's like, but what the hell, man? I am a fitness influencer. How do I have stage 4 cancer? And I asked Tara about it. Oh, so he never get got checked. He's like, well, I'm fit, so like, how
Right.
could I have cancer, right?
Sure.
And then when this came out, I asked Tara, I was like, is this possible? And she's like, yeah, because cancer is a strong genetic component as well.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, oh, so we're just screwed, bro. Like, it doesn't really matter what you do. You know what I mean? And from that perspective, like my dad's always said, it's when it's your time, it's your time. Like God's just gonna choose,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And when you think about that, it's like literally this person's so healthy. Like they're literally an influencer and they
Hmm.
have stage 4 cancer.
Hmm.
You're like, what happened here? You know?
Sure.
Yeah. So all right, let's say they figure out cancer. Boom, that's done. The last thing is aging. And they
Hmm.
already know, which is crazy because it's like they're on the path to figuring out these two things right now through quantum computing. A couple of weeks ago or something, we were talking about quantum computing.
Yeah.
So like the faster the processor, what it was saying in the book was that if you're able to process a lot faster, it can pick out patterns that you don't necessarily see or would take a longer time to see.
Hmm.
Right. So they can run the algorithm and they see the pattern.
Yeah.
So they're very optimistic that they'll be able to cure both cancer and aging. And they know with cancer, it's like what's the effect? But with aging, did you know about telomeres?
I think I heard that word before.
So if you believe in Anunnaki, we used to live like thousands and thousands of years. Like because they're like, oh, the king reigned for like 150,000 years, something like that. And you're like, how does that work? But the reason why we age is on our DNA strand, there's telomeres at the like endpoints.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
basically, once you hit that, your DNA cannot replicate anymore. And that's why you like die because you're like,
Okay.
you're
Yeah. I remember that.
slowly,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So, like, your DNA, when it doesn't hit the telomere, it's like it can keep like every 7 years, all cells in your body are totally new.
Mm-hmm.
So it just keeps doing that. But like once you hit the telomere, it's like we're done. You can't go past this. So they're trying to extend the telomeres,
Sure.
right? And one thing that I thought was interesting, this is not Anunnaki related, this is actual science related. Have you heard of there's a type 2 diabetic drug that they give out, and inadvertently they found out that it extends the telomeres.
No, I didn't.
So
I don't think I heard that one.
I forgot, I forgot what it's so famous. Like I have family members on it.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that's like really weird is like they say like 80 or whatever. My grandma's like 95, right? And she's like kicking so strong. And we're like, oh yeah, it's like my uncle Francis' dad was like, oh yeah, it's the love that's keeping her alive. And I'm like, yeah,
Sure.
totally. But then it's like you're also taking this like type 2 diabetic medication. Is it the telomeres too? Like, what are we doing here? Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I really think that soon, very soon, we're going to figure out how to stop aging. And that's not even like that's not even like a pie in the sky idea. Like Joe Rogan's had people on there who have really looked into this. Like stem cells? Have you
Yeah.
looked
Yeah.
into that? Dude, that's crazy too. Like Joe Rogan had like a torn rotator cuff, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna need surgery."
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh, what are my options?" Like, well, there's this thing called like stem cells. So he went and got the stem cell shot, and it healed on its own.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what if you could just like mass produce stem cells, bro? Like you know what I mean? Like tech is so crazy
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we're like you're like transporting consciousness through freaking digital spheres. You have like Neuralink, you have telomere anti-aging, you have cancer research, you have um like the stem cells. It's like, are we gonna become gods? Like what's going on? Like in the Bible, like in the older time, it's like they live for thousands of years. Like that actually could be possible.
It's
It's
possible.
just
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what these research things want to do, right? So,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Maybe.
It's some things we
And
find by
yeah,
accident too, not necessarily even though we're not looking for it. Sometimes some things we find by accident.
the telomere thing, it was literally it's literally for diabetes. And then they're like, wait a minute, there's like something that's happening with the telomeres that it's like extending it.
Mm-hmm.
And then like they're noticing people are like younger for longer on it.
Right.
But it's kind of weird because it's like I was like, should I just take this type 2 diabetes drug? Like, what's going on? Because like
Right.
off label, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, there are there are other uses for things that are not what it's manufactured
Mm-hmm.
for. Like cold and sinus. Like I
Yeah, yeah,
took
yeah.
that for my allergies, but I don't have a cold. But
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
like it'll help. Yeah. So going back to like the whole Anunnaki thing, it's like, could this all just be tech? Like all of the things that they're saying, like the ancients did, when you read into it, you're like, no, that doesn't sound realistic. That's so fantasy. And now we're catching up to that point where it's actually starting to make a lot of sense. If you just say it's tech, you're like, no, it's not magic, bro. It's tech.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been binge listening to Billy Carson, and one thing he said was the Emerald tablets, which are like super old, ancient. I've talked about them before. Um, and I've read them too, and they're just so logical. It's like action reaction. Like that's so basic, like obviously, right? Or like if you focus your thoughts, you can achieve an outcome. Obviously, makes sense, right? It's so basic to you and I. And what he said was that when they were written, what they said when they wrote them was they'll become an advanced age where people will understand what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So they went through like all this whole time period where people didn't understand it. They're like, what are you talking about? But now as I tell you this, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. And it's like theoretically, Billy Carson saying that we are that age that they've been waiting for.
Sure. Okay.
And it's like, if you look into ancient stuff, kind of making sense. Talk about aliens now, kind of making sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you think? No, kind of ridiculous.
No, I mean I don't know enough about it, but There's something there,
There's
right?
something there,
There's
bro.
something there. There's something there.
Bro,
Yeah. We
thank
of
you.
course we've lost a lot of information. I mean, like we keep going back to even with the religious stuff, right? The Vimanas. Like, why are they talking about planes or something? What is
Why?
that?
Like,
They have a
but that's
specific
it,
word for it, right? So,
right? But that's the thing, right? That's what he was saying. That's why we're hitting the age where the Emerald Tablet said they'll come a new age where you will understand what we're saying,
mhm.
right? But if you made this like 100 years ago, what's a plane, bro?
Sure.
But now it's like, oh yeah, we just made a plane.
Yeah.
You know, you have all these tracking satellites for UAPs. It's like, yeah, there's these things out there
Hmm.
that look like giant discs in the sky that they wrote about, thousands of years ago. Like we are actually able with our tech to like achieve that. What if they like just seeded us? Like that's what they say. Like
Sure.
he
Right. Yeah.
says
Yeah.
that like Earth is an abandoned seed colony.
Hmm.
So what it is like, they tried to build the colony here, some destruction happened, and they kind of had to leave because it's like, oh, this Earth is not very habitable, right? Because like that's why like they had a whole civilization, but then I guess an asteroid hit or something, and then we had to restart our civilization.
Hmm.
Graham Hancock talks about that, right? So it's like, what if we really are just an abandoned seed colony and we are just like the offspring of these genetic experiments that work? It sounds ridiculous, but like we would do the same thing. That's the point of like we are hitting that age where it's all making sense. Like if we went, like, why are we going to Mars?
Hmm.
You know, but we're looking for other place to go.